Hey, this is Josh with Cultural Catholic coming at you on Thursday for an International Wednesday. Things got a little hectic yesterday, so I didn't have time to record, but I got some stories that are very interesting. I think you guys will like. So let's jump right in. The first story we'll talk about is in Chile. The Guardian reported on Tuesday that the decision by Chile's constitutional court to approve a bill that will allow abortion in some circumstances has been hailed as a triumph of reason and an act of justice by campaigners. The legislation, a victory for the center-left President Michelle Bachelet, will allow abortion when a woman's life is at risk in case of rape and when a fetus is not viable. Today, women have won, democracy has won, all of Chile has won, said Bachelet, who introduced the bill in 2015. So basically, what this is saying is abortion is now legal in some cases in Chile. Um, the article explains that this was a very long, hard fought campaign, and a lot of international groups are praising it, and it's one of the more liberal abortion laws in Latin America, which is good. My personal opinion, I don't have to like it to support it, but I don't have the right to tell women you can't do this thing. As far as I'm concerned, it's their body, their choice. Again, I don't personally like it, but that's fine. And actually, ironically enough, the Catholic Church is against this law, even though that is their stated policy. Um, that those sorts of instances, it's okay to do an abortion or have an abortion, but they're against this law, which is kind of weird. Um, Going on in that vein, the court did allow for conscientious objection, meaning that any doctor or medical assistant can refuse to carry out an abortion. Reactions from the opponents of the bill, led by the Catholic Church, has been vitriolic. Christiane Contreras, vice president of the Episcopal Conference of Bishops, said the ruling was a terrible decision influenced by an ideology of death and runs against the fundamental principles of the country's constitution. Chile was had some of the most liberal abortion laws in Latin America, but conservative views, particularly those of the Church, began to take hold in the final phase of his dictatorship. Augusto Pinochet introduced an outright ban. So basically, what this is saying is, before the Pinochet regime, it was a pretty liberal stance on abortion, and this is part of the legacy that America has in Chile. Pinochet was propped up by the American government. So really, this is another thing in a long line of our fault. And again, while I don't like abortion, I don't have the right to tell people they can't do it. And additionally, this law is actually in line with Catholic doctrine, so I don't know why the Catholic Church is being kind of weird and cranky here. Um, yeah, the next story is going to be a bit of a downer. So I'm going to start out by showing you this little little infographic from the UN. It's showing how the migrant crisis is going right now, and you'll see that uh, Greece, which used to be the big draw point for refugees, especially from Syria, has kind of fallen to second fiddle to Italy. And with Italy, it's mostly coming from North Africa through Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, a little bit of Egypt. And actually, the number of Syrian refugees has fallen in the number of people, at least in July, this year. Syrians are now like 7%. However, Nigerians seem to be the biggest group at 15%. And there's also a little bit of action going on in Spain through Morocco. Um, and Italy's actually been really hit hard by the refugee crisis. Their current government has had a lot of trouble dealing with it, and they've actually been assisting the Libyan government Coast Guard in trying to deal with the issues. I'm a little iffy with how Libya may be treating the refugees, but uh, that stems from Vice Peace a couple years back. I'm sure the groups that were like the Libyan militia in the Vice Peace have been ended, but I'm not entirely sure. Getting into some articles, first one being from the New York Times, published on the 18th, states that the main route to Europe is experiencing one of its longest lulls since the migration crisis began in 2014. Just over 4,000 migrants have reached Italy from Libya since mid-July, about a fifth of the number during the equivalent periods of 2014, 15, and 16, according to the Italian Interior Ministry. Um, the lull provides rare respite for Italy, whose migration and the center-left government's response to it may prove to be a defining factor in the general election in the coming months. So Italy, like a lot of Europe, has had a bit of a right-wing backlash against the migrants. Um, I mean, I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. People feel a little displaced in their own country by people who they have no connection to, feel no affiliation with, and they feel like they're being displaced in their own country. I get it. I don't agree with it, but that's probably just from my perspective coming from a country of immigrants. Um, and this is actually a good thing for the Italian government, which is center left, a little bit better than the right wingers that are trying to take over through the electoral system. Um, and if Italy is able to capitalize on this lull, on this improved relations with Libya, on these better migration numbers, they may be able to hold on to power and not become a right wing government, which would be good. Some explanations to this are noted in the New York Times article and a Reuters article, which I'll also read. In recent days, the Coast Guard's leadership threatened to attack boats operated by charities like Doctors Without Borders, prompting several of those groups to suspend rescue operations. Italy has also sent naval ships to assist the Coast Guard in Libyan waters and has made it harder for boats from NGOs to operate freely in Italian waters. There is some speculation that the drop in departures is a result of those measures, but specialists say the truth is more complicated. For instance, the lull began before the rescue boats were forced to suspend operations and before the arrival of the Italian naval ships. The Reuters article, published on the 21st, details that an armed group is stopping migrant boats from setting off across the Mediterranean from a city west of Tripoli that has been a springboard for people smugglers, causing a sudden drop in departures over the past month. Sources in the area said the revelation throws new light on the sharp reduction in migrant arrivals from Italy, which took over from the Aegean route as the main focus of the European concerns in the crisis. So a lot of the migrants are coming over via smugglers who are taking advantage of the situation. I don't think that smugglers should be doing. I don't think that smugglers should be the people benefiting from this. I think the people who are fleeing dangerous situations should be the ones benefiting. My stance on refugees is they're looking for a safe place to stay. Give them a safe place to stay. That is like a fundamental human right, to have some place where they feel safe. And I think that I mean I get the reactions. There's too many. There's a lot of people coming. Seemingly too many. They need help. They need to stem the flow to make it manageable. And I get it. And European countries aren't as economically capable to take them on. Like they all, every country has a limit. Um, which is partially why I think more Middle Eastern countries, the richer ones, should do their part. America should do its part. The rest of the West should do its part, meaning Western Hemisphere. And this armed group seems to be tamping down on the smugglers, which is good, but they may not if the official Libyan government, the GNA, does not uh, give them backing. It's highly probable that they will. I'm just a little concerned with how they're treating the migrants and refugees, actually, because most of these people are coming from war-torn countries. A lot of them are coming from Nigeria, which is not as war-torn as it used to be, but it's still going through a heavy insurgency in Nigeria. Additional explanations, as the New York Times states, for the drop is other partial explanations include a drop in migrant arrivals to Libya from Niger and a marginal increase in departures from Morocco, which some migrants use as part of an alternative route to Europe. So, like I said, Nigeria is seeing a drop in the violence, not as significant as it should be, but it is experiencing that. However, a lot of people fleeing north to Europe are coming from Sudan, South Sudan and Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, places where economically and safety-wise aren't doing so hot. So I really think that the world needs to do its part to help these people, and if it means bringing them into our countries, do so. I mean, a little bit of vetting should be fine. I think the question is of how long and how thorough the vetting is. I think the American system is good. It could be streamlined a little bit more, like taking away the need for the FBI director to sign off on every refugee application. But that is just me. So it appears that things are getting better in the refugee crisis. It should be a refugee crisis, not migrant crisis, because that changes legal definitions and protections, as John Oliver pointed out in his piece a couple years back. But I think we need to do more. And the final story comes out of India. NPR reported on the 22nd of August that Muslim men in India will no longer be able to terminate their marriages in a matter of moments after a split decision by the country's Supreme Court overruled the practice of triple talaq. Previously, Muslim men, and only men, could irrevocably end their marriage by repeating talaq, the Arabic word for divorce, 3 times. Women's rights advocates in India have fought to end the practice. Now 3 of 5 judges on the Supreme Court have ruled that the practice violates the country's constitutional guarantees of equality. So talaq, as explained, is a form of divorce. There are actually 3 kinds of talaq. However, the one that they were focusing on, talaq-i-badat, is irrevocable. There's also talaq asan and talaq hasan, which aren't irrevocable. And I think this is a great step forward because NPR and the other article that I will cite, which goes a little bit more in depth because it's a local paper, explained that most of the Muslim world does not allow or has reformed talaq. And India, which has the world's second largest Muslim population after Egypt, decided we need to deal with this. However, as the Hindu Times article will explain, the 2 justices that went against it, especially the Chief Justice, they cited the Shariat Act of 1937 and the Indian Constitution, saying that religious laws need to be viewed as personal law and can only be reformed in the legislature. And neither of these justices agree with talaq. They both feel that it should be outlawed. They just want the legislature to do it to make it more permanent and a more permanent solution. However, with this 3-2 decision, it is a permanent solution now. NPR goes on to explain that The justices ruled the practice is not essential to the Muslim faith and thus failed a key legal test, NPR's Julie McCarthy reports. The court noted that the Quran had attributed sanctity and permanence to matrimony and encouraged reconciliation between couples. But the court said with triple talaq, which amounts to instant divorce, this door is closed. Justice Rohinton Fali Nariman, I may be butchering that pronunciation, said it was manifestly arbitrary to allow a Muslim man to whimsically and capriciously divorce his wife, according to the Hindu newspaper, which is the other paper that I will post a link to in the description. Um, like I said, that article goes a lot more in depth to the cultural practices and understandings in the area, and also solutions that that a local Muslim rights organization is suggesting to Muslim couples getting married, specifically the bridegrooms or grooms. Um, and I think this is a huge step forward for human rights in India. It was actually highly praised by Narendra Modi, who I have my issues with, but he does seem a little he does seem like he wants to help people, although I am a little suspicious of his motives with when it comes to Muslims. The Hindu Times published on the 22nd explained further that the court ruled missing the opportunity to address the question of gender inequality in both the Shah Bano and Daniel Latifi cases. In the Shah Bano case, the court merely goaded the government to frame a uniform civil code. In the Latifi case, it upheld the right of Muslim women to maintenance till remarriage. For the first time, Muslim women and organizations joined forces with the court's initiative. However, the Constitution Bench, the Supreme Court as it's called in India, decided to confine itself to examining triple talaq and not polygamy and nikah halala. Polygamy seems to be very common practice in India, and nikah halala is like a marriage remarriage. Is a Muslim divorcee marries a man, divorces him to get remarried to her former husband, and it's viewed as a violation of women's dignity. Um, the arguments later narrowed to instant talaq or talaq-i-badat. So again, this is a huge step forward for human rights in India, and it's just a great day to be alive in this world. Um, I tried to sandwich a bad story between two good stories, so hopefully this seems like a good trend. This is Joshua with Cultural Catholic signing off for the day.